The FujiCast is an independent loading zone production.
One of the problems, Kev, is that when we do these preamble things, normally it's whatever we say is it's going to be okay. But if we mention anything to do with this pandemic, you know, I've got to come back and edit this.
Yeah.
But Kev has taken to watching horror. Sorry, gallows humour. Watching horror movies, which you never did. You would never watch a horror movie, would you?
The scariest thing I think I would watch is Midsummer Murders. Now, I watched something called Shutter Island yesterday. Have you seen that?
No.
It's got that fella in it with...
that fella?
Famous guy was also in that one with the boat, where he stood at the end of the boat, the boat that sank.
Titanic?
Yes, him. What's his name?
DiCaprio?
Yes, him.
He's not in a horror movie, is he?
Shutter Island, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well,
okay.
I mean, I'm calling it a horror movie because it made me go eek several times.
Yeah.
I think it's only a 12.
That's not horror.
Yeah, well, it's quite scary. There's a lot of killing going on.
Well, horror is to me, it's a bit like eating if you go to an Indian restaurant, eat a fal. It's like I
like a good fal.
Yeah?
Well, I used to.
Yeah, well, that's a bit like, you know, you've got to get yourself... You don't not particularly enjoying it because it's so spicy.
Yeah.
But you kind of think, well, I can do this.
Yeah, when it's done right, it's good. Good fal.
Is it?
Well, I can't eat them now, of course, but yeah, there's no such thing as a vegan fal.
Is there not such a thing as
I wouldn't have thought so.
a meat-free fal?
Well, there might be. Who knows? But yeah, Shutter Island, scary things. Keeps me away from...
I'm trying to think of some things you should watch.
The social media world.
What about It?
Oh, I've seen that years and years and years ago.
Oh, well, you've seen that then.
Yeah.
Anything with clowns.
Yeah, I don't like any of that stuff. I have to say, part of the thing that I don't mind so much if there's a good story. What I don't like is just violence.
So Saw wouldn't be your kind of thing.
Is that the one when they're in the basement and he has to cut his own leg off to get out of the shackles?
I think so. Is that game thing?
I saw that once, yeah.
Do you know you've seen all these movies?
Yeah, there was years ago, though. The scariest one I ever saw was a Japanese one. And it had this woman that crawled out of a TV with long black hair.
Right. I know what you mean. I've seen it.
Terrifying.
In the Night Garden.
The FujiCast.
Welcome to what we've called, for the last couple of weeks, Main Show Monday. A nod to times that seem so distant, but are in fact only 2 or 3 weeks previous to the publication of this particular episode. Episode 69. And you'll notice that Kev, in this episode, is in the studio. But I want you to know this was recorded prior to social distancing. Oh yes, when we were permitted to talk with complete strangers face to face, of course. And sit next to a snorer on a bus. This will be the last longer Main Show Monday for the foreseeable, as we've taken on the mantle of doing a daily show now, which I hope you've been downloading. The daily show, yes, may be more compact, but it'll still feature interviews, as it has been doing, your photography questions, as it has been doing, from the mailbag, and particularly now your very important questions about photography, tech and non-tech, and what you've been up to during this time. The main show will be back as its Monday edition only, when the shutters have gone up again, and we've either kicked this virus right where it fittingly hurts, or we're in some kind of normality again, whatever that means. If you're new to the show, it may be called the FujiCast, but just like that well-known campaign, A Dog Is Not Just for Christmas, a FujiCast is not just for those that like mirrorless cameras of only one brand flavour, so you're very welcome no matter what you shoot, even a pinhole camera if that's what's floating your creative boat. Today on this longer show then, Kev's book review returns, another one of your disaster stories. We visit Club Indulgence, virtually of course. That kind of decadent behaviour is otherwise a complete no-no for most of us right now. And we'll be talking with Fran May about her storytelling that drew great appreciation from the late great Bill Brandt. It's all to come on Main Show Monday. So, now an edit seamlessly back to our recording session a good few weeks back, where I tell Kev a little more about Fran May and that relationship with Bill Brandt as a tutor, where I ask Kev to imagine what it would be like to go to his house with your pictures. Imagine what that would feel like. You're sat on a chair with him poring over your pictures and you're having to show your work to him.
Yeah, ridiculously.
Yeah, imagine what that would feel like.
Uncomfortable, I would imagine.
I think so. Anyway,
That's how I feel when I show my pictures to you.
No, don't be daft.
Yeah.
One thing I would like, by the way, this is I'm fed up now of this chair. For about...
Not as fed up as we are.
About 20 episodes now, I've had to edit the chair sound out. I really hate this chair.
I've never noticed it. Now you talked about it.
It squeaks all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Yours doesn't squeak. Squeak free.
Why didn't you change your seats then?
Well, it's money.
No, I mean, why don't you have my seat?
No, because then you'd be squeaking.
Yeah, but I don't move around as much as you. I don't have to press all those buttons and nobble those dials and stuff.
Oh, anyway.
That's another 300 listeners we've lost.
Do we know anybody with a seat business? Right, your question. You go first.
Okay, this is from Mike.
Yeah.
Just as Mike.
I like Mike.
And he says, "Hi all. Love the podcast and I'm catching up slowly. Listening from Sunshine Coast, Queensland, Australia. Question for both of you. If you could only take 2 camera bodies at a wedding and they had to be the same model and make, etc., which would you choose and why? And which lenses? Can't be a fixed lens camera," he says.
Oh,
he's throwing down a lot of parameters there.
So what, you've got to have 2 cameras, same camera.
They got to be
same body.
Which camera would you have twice with you?
Well, I don't have an XT4 yet, so I'd be choosing... if it was Fujifilm, I'd be choosing an XT3. Mm-hmm. If it was Canon, because of course I come from that Canon background, I probably wouldn't have gone for the 5D4. I'd probably go for the 5D3. I loved that camera.
Well, for me it'd be X Pro 3.
Okay.
There we go. Thank you, Mike.
Oh, what about lenses?
All the way from Queensland.
Lenses. How many lenses are we allowed in this golf bag?
We've got 2 cameras each, haven't we? So we've got two lenses each.
So just 2 lenses.
23, 56.
56 and 23. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Same.
And we're not gonna do that APS-C equivalent thing. That's banned.
Well, I might sometimes slip into
no more full frame equivalent.
I'll try not to. Richard Wiedekind. This is probably one for Kevin, as he's commented on this topic in his blog and on the podcast. His advocacy of professional mode seemed to surprise Neil and a good few of his followers, including me. My question is, seeing as the same metering system is used in program aperture and shutter modes, is there any difference in the calculated exposures? Stand by, it's a technical question. If I set my camera in program and use program shift to scroll through shutter aperture pairs determined by the meter, aren't I essentially doing aperture exposure, shutter exposure when I select either an f-stop or shutter speed in the sequence? All being equal, Kev, it shouldn't matter if I select my exposure with either program shift, aperture or shutter, but there might be a distinct advantage to P-mode if I'm shooting subjects where depth of field or movement are changing priorities and I want to react quickly, like in Street. Or as Kevin found, at weddings. I'm looking at you.
Can you repeat that, please? No, just joking. Yeah, no, absolutely. So if you're shifting the program mode, if you're shifting it either aperture or shutter speed...
Yes, well, it's for any camera, really, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's called program shift. Then of course, you're no longer in P mode.
No.
Technically, you're adjusting aperture, you're adjusting shutter speed. So...
but is there any advantage to it?
Well, it's the same. Yes, of course. There's an advantage in that, if you want narrower depth of field or you're in low light and you need to set a shot and the camera's, choosing an aperture that's too wide or too narrow. I mean, there are benefits, of course. Mostly the benefits are in the shutter speed stuff because if you sometimes you want slow shutter speed to demonstrate motion or movement. Sometimes you're shooting things that are really, really quick and you need really fast shutter speed. So, but P mode, true P mode is basically where you're allowing the camera
to do everything.
With a little caveat of, I suppose, is it really true P mode if you have auto ISO?
Yeah, auto ISO, So, anyway, thank you. Richard from, I think this is Waiheke Island in New Zealand. So, thank you very much. Right, yours.
Okay, this is from Joe Arthur, and Joe says, "Love the show. I've been shooting for over 12 years now. I've shot magazine covers, years of weddings, model shoots, commercial work, etc. But after all of that, I still feel as if there isn't much to show for it, even though I was proud of the work at the time. The past couple of years were tough personally, a divorce and a loss in the family, among other things. But it was through this time that I started to create more meaningful and better work. It takes much more to feel proud these days, maybe a handful of images a year. Do you guys run into this type of thing as well? Thanks, Joe Arthur from Connecticut in the US of A.
Wait, do you run into that?
Yeah, I mean, it's very different personal circumstances and things. But yeah, I mean, it does take more. I tend to be less pleased with my work as quick these days, put it that way.
Less pleased with your work as quick.
Yeah, I need to. I think I'm
It
more.
needs to almost mature before you're happy with it.
Yeah, I guess so.
Like a good file.
Like a good file, like a good vegan file. Yeah, I guess. I
Don't do a vegan file. Bring in the file. Oh, sorry about
that. Yeah, I think, but that's a sign of a sign of your own personal.
I think
maturity.
as you grow with your abilities, then you're bound to feel. You're thinking, no, this could be so much better. I know I could do better.
Yeah, and also remember what I always say: your picture doesn't have to be good; it just needs to be important.
I love that saying of yours.
And so, whether it's important to you or the client, that's,
I might.
that's the thing.
I haven't got a tattoo. I think I might have that tattooed.
You could have my face tattooed next to it.
What, one backside with your face and the other with your expression? Oh, that'd be different. Melanie Yilang. Yes, Melanie Yilang. Good day, Neil. Good day, Kevin. Thanks for your podcast, blah, 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 in brackets, as Kevin says. I listen to it on my way to and from work as a small-town librarian. I've followed Kevin's wedding photography online for a few years and aspire to a similar style of shooting. There we go. Thanks to your podcast, the other day I bought a second-hand Lumimuse and used it camping as a hands-free walk-around light mounted to my everyday Carry X30 camera. Of course, also in Australia, you'd be using it to spot the snakes, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The amount of people that die from snake bites in Australia.
1.8 a year, as we learned last week on the show. Hopefully, I'll soon find a way to use it as Manfrotto actually intended. Recently, I was invited to talk to the small local high school art class about photography, as I'm known in my community as an amateur photographer. I have a particular interest in shooting classic cars, community events, wildflowers and random stuff. And I like using adapted legacy lenses as well as my Micro Four Thirds system lenses. I'm not sure where to begin with a talk, especially as I haven't yet taken the step to making regular income from my work, which I hope to in the future. A teacher assured me they'd be interested in recreational photographers, not just professionals. Okay, so she's going to do a talk, right? Instead of a boring biographical talk, I was thinking perhaps it might be more interesting and beneficial as a Q&A. But I really don't know how to get this talk thing ball rolling. Now, you've done a lot of talks.
Yeah.
What's the best way to approach a talk?
Well, the way that I always think about these things, if it's basically going to be you stood there for half an hour, whatever it is, talking to people, then much like any kind of business presentation, because ultimately that's what it is a presentation, it's good to have some framework for, don't just kind of blather into it a bit like I do on this podcast, but think a good way of educating is always for every session. At the beginning you talk about what you're going to talk about, then you talk about it, and at the end you talk about what you already talked about, so you summarize. So, hello class, here we are today we're going to talk about taking photographs of poppies.
So 1, throw forward.
Correct.
2,
then you talk about it.
Do it.
And then in summary, you say,
3,
so this is what we talked about, any questions, etc., etc. So give yourself a framework, give yourself some bullet points throughout to think about as a kind of anchor points for the talk. And then the Q&A are really at the end. I do see occasionally on the speaker circuit, I see some photographers who perhaps, I don't know, I'm probably going to get punched in the face for this, but perhaps think they're a little bit bigger than they are, and they can't be bothered to actually do a talk. So they just say, Q&A with such and such. Come and ask me questions.
Oh, right. So not really imparting with any useful knowledge.
No, right, it's and I'm like, yeah, well, can't we just do that in the pub? Can't we?
Well, they're just taking the money, aren't they? Thank you very much.
Exactly. So I'm not saying absolutely. It's not saying that's what Melanie's doing, but it's sometimes it's seen as an easy way out, and actually it can fall flat in your face if nobody asks a question. So
I think also honesty is a really, really important thing when you're talking to people. And showing your having humility, being a humble speaker is a really important thing. I thought one of the best. This is going to come out the wrong way, however I do this. But one of the funniest, best, most motivational speeches I've seen you do is when you started it was 2 years ago at X Weddings. and you talked about your worst pictures from your first wedding. I saw the eyes around that room were kind of like they lit up in this kind of like, oh, right, somebody's going to tell us the truth.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I totally agree with that, and
Now, you have to be careful how you do that because you're there as the in inverted commas expert.
Yeah, but you have to. I for years the first part of my presentation was talking about the people that I've been inspired by.
Yeah.
I always thought that was really important. You were on that list for a little while.
I was for a little while. I
took you off it in the end.
I got bumped off. Yeah. I expected that.
And then I show some pictures from my first wedding, and then I show pictures from my first wedding.
What, from your wife?
No.
My word.
Oh. Moving on.
That's a bit strange, isn't it? Bring in the first wife.
Although I do have to, I do have to kind of get in touch with her soon.
Do you? Why?
Yeah, it's very complicated.
Oh, right, okay. Well, we've got time. Would you like to expand? No, don't worry. Right, your question.
Ash Milburn, he says, hi, with all the excitement surrounding the announcement and release of the X-T4, it is easy to overlook that there has actually been another X-T camera released by Fujifilm recently.
Yes.
Do you know what he's going to say?
X-T200.
Yes. X-T200. As not all photographers have a limitless supply of money, I would appreciate some feedback and maybe a spotlight being shone on an upcoming podcast about whether the X-T200 is a good camera and a worthy upgrade to my X-T100.
That's a good point, actually, because we don't really talk about the X-T. Well, we haven't talked about the X-T200 at all as it was coming up.
I love my X-T100, and yes, it is an entry-level camera, but it's still capable of producing some superb stills.
Yeah.
I'm on the tightest of budgets, and I'm sure I can't be the only one listening who can't stretch to the X-T4, X Pro 3. So how about a few minutes discussing the abilities of the X-T100 or X-T200?
Well, have you used them? No.
I feel like he's turning us off a bit there.
Do you think so?
I feel like, how about you spend some time doing what I want you to do? Instead of what everybody else wants you to do.
But he does have a point, though.
He does have a point.
We have talked about the X-T4 a lot. The X Pro 3 we just went bonkers over.
I am only joking, of course, Ash.
Yeah.
I had the X-T100.
Yeah.
Very good camera. Sold it.
Very, very good camera. Sold it.
I sold a lot of stuff recently.
Right.
X-T200 I haven't had any time with at all.
Right.
I would say yes, actually, you're right, it is an entry level kind of camera, but the X-T200 has had a few like the 4K upgrades and various other bits and pieces are still, for me, I think as somebody who used the X-T100, I don't think I would have a need right now for the X-T200. The reason I got the X-T100 originally was because I wanted to use it for vlogging. With that little tilt screen,
flip around screen.
No, of course that's in the X-T4 and various things. So, and I don't really do any vlogging, so it kind of went away for me, and that's why I sold it. But you're right, you're absolutely right. And actually, you know what, I'm not sure what the price of the X-T200 is, but it's definitely cheaper than an iPhone.
Yes,
definitely.
Yeah.
Interchangeable lenses, 4K video, little flippy, tilty round screen. All of those lovely filters that I love, the toy camera filters and everything, which are in a lot of the cameras, but I love all those. I think they're great. So hopefully, Ash, I don't know, have you got the timer going? Did we get to 2 minutes talking about Ash's X-T200? Is it just 2?
Did we get to 2 minutes there?
How about no?
No, we didn't. It's 1 minute 50. So says the producer.
So there we go, Ash. You're
Sorry,
right.
Ash.
It's a good camera. Entry level for sure. Doesn't mean it's bad.
You'll whip him into shape.
But if your X-T100 is giving you what you need, you do not need to upgrade.
Absolutely. Okay, one more, and then we'll do the Kev's Book of the Week this week. Mark Bodie, top of the day to you both. Is he from Ireland?
I'm guessing so.
Well, it's a very Irish phrase, isn't it? But he doesn't say
top of the morning.
Top of the morning. Top of the day. Just finished listening to episode 53 and the publishing of a book. While I think both of you have work worthy of a book, I totally understand why you feel you don't. Oh yeah, we were both saying we don't think we're not worthy. Don't we all think that about our own work? Anyway, I may have a solution for you chaps. How about a zine? Just in case you don't know what they are, here's a Wikipedia definition. A zine is a small circulation self-published work of original or appropriated texts and images, usually reproduced via photocopier. There's a whole zine culture out there, and I've only just discovered it. It covers a whole range of artists. So my limited research getting published is it's ridiculously simple. Most printers do booklets, and a zine is pretty much a booklet. you could do a limited run of 50 and just charge folks for the price of the printing and the shipping. Oh, I'm in the process of making my first. I'll send you a copy. Has it arrived?
I haven't seen it.
Showing my black and white landscapes. Anyway, keep up the great work. Yada, yada, yada. From Mark Bodie. That's an idea, isn't it? A zine.
Yeah, a zine. Although I hate the word zine.
Oh, do you? Oh,
I hate it.
So why?
I hate it, really? hate it.
It seems a little bit strong, really. Most people hate things
hate
like
it.
a virus,
No.
but you hate a zine.
Don't say the word zine to me.
Why?
I hate it.
Do you hate it almost as much as the word tog?
Yes, I hate it. Hate it. I hate silent letters as well. Right. Pointless things. But I hate the word zine. I like what they are.
Do you like the idea of producing a zine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Stop saying it.
Well, what are we going to call it? It's not a magazine, is it?
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
It is. It's just a little one.
A zine?
No. Don't just cut half of words off just because
mag.
It's a small
one.
What
about a mag?
You don't have, like a little book isn't called an ook.
It's called a booklet.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, no, that's expanded.
No, because a booklet is not a book. A booklet is something different.
No, a booklet's a small book.
A zine is a magazine.
Right.
If you have a I don't know, a small coffee, you don't call it a fee. Ugh. Anyway, I hate it. The zine word, I hate it. Right. I have an unnatural.
But what about the idea of a mini magazine then?
That's better. That sounds much better. I think the idea is very good. Yeah, right. And actually, there's a lot of people doing them. He's quite right. I remember them when
there's a mini magazine culture, obviously.
Mini magazines. I remember when we used to go, when me and my dad used to go and watch Newport County back in the day, and they would have the what they would call fanzines.
Right.
Little
See, that was a zine?
Black and white things.
Fanzine?
Yeah, but it was a fan magazine.
Right. No, it wasn't. It was fanzine.
Fan magazine.
Oh, okay.
Fan mini magazine.
Yeah. Did you buy this fan mini magazine?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it was great. And then sometimes they would even do them. They would have them printed by the time you got to the newspapers. Yeah. The South Wales Argus used to do a football special, and the football would finish at 4:45. And by the time 6 o'clock came, they'd have it printed, and you could still the ink was still wet on the paper, and they'd be selling them at the gates.
Do you have a lot of trouble in London, by the way?
What do you mean?
If ever
around.
you come out of Oxford Circus, there's a guy right at the top that's selling the Evening. They don't sell it anymore. They give it away now, don't they? The Evening Standard.
Yeah.
Now, in times gone past, they go Evening Standard. Now they go, yeah. It's just not a word anymore, is it?
Yeah. That would be a great photo. I'm not going to tell anybody what I'm thinking now.
Go on.
No,
go on.
Because that would be a really good
photo story.
Because I remember
that guy at the top there.
Yeah, but all of them.
They've become different guys.
You know what happened, don't you, with the Standard? When I was working in London, I used to get my Standard every night from the top of Liverpool Street Station.
Right.
And in those days, it was.
Would they have shouted Evening Standard then?
35 pence.
Evening Standard.
They all shout different things, you see.
Ah.
And then when the Evening Standard went free, of course, it became a lot more adverts in there, but it went free. And all of these sellers who were getting paid commission by the amount of papers they sold suddenly were out of work. And a lot of them have been there for like 20, 30, 40, 50 years. They've been doing it for a long time. So there's a big campaign to keep the sellers, and of which they did keep them, and now I think they give them some kind of basic amount of money just to do the job. It's not based on the sales. Yeah. So now they don't need to shout to get people to come over. They do. They used to. Yeah. Yeah. But also, it stems back to the time when there was more than one, like evening newspapers and stuff. There was a few of them
Metro
fighting
now as
for
well,
it.
of course, isn't there? But
yeah, there's loads of them. Yeah.
Right, book of the week, Kev's book of the week. What have you got for us this week?
Oh, I'm reaching over.
It's a big book, this one.
I shouldn't do that because this is an expensive.
I know.
Very, very limited edition. It's not a limited edition, it's just a first edition. So what we have today is Anton Corbijn. I call him Corbijn. You might call him Corbyn. And this is the book.
Please don't write in about that.
This is called.
He knows.
This is called Famous.
Yes.
I have the German print edition of this.
FAMOUZ.
Yeah, photographs 1975 to 1988.
Yes.
There is English print and German print. I have the first edition German print of this, so it's pretty rare.
Wow. So this isn't available anymore. You couldn't go on Amazon and find this, would you?
You would be I'd be very surprised if you could find. Certainly not the first edition. I'd be very surprised if you could find. You might pick it up in a bookstore, or you might find it on abebooks.com or anything or something like that. However,
look at these plates.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who doesn't know Anton Corbijn, whatever you want to call it, he is a very, very famous photographer. Does a lot of the photographs for U2. He did the documentary, the film, The American, with George Clooney. The American, he was the director
You're
of
looking
that.
like, yeah.
He also did that film about Joy Division called Control, and that's a brilliant film.
Yep.
And some of the pictures I'm looking at now in this book are, from there, stills from there. It's and it's a black and white film.
Yeah.
Amazing film.
Would you ever think about
shot.
doing your YouTube films in black and white?
Yeah, possibly.
Or has it kind of been done?
Yeah, it's a bit, but who knows? I mean, it's all about. The thing about black and white is, as I'm flicking through these pictures here.
These are just enormous. These are enormous pictures. But in terms of their contrast.
Look at that. You know exactly where that is.
I like black to be black and white to be white.
Yeah,
it's not a salad of grey like you see so much black and white work. Look at that.
That's outside the Bank of England.
Yeah.
But the thing is, what you're talking to,
shadows just disappear into nothing. Which
you need light. You need light in black and white. Yeah. You need to have light, and you need to have dark. You can't just make a low contrast image, black and white, and then hope for the best. And that's why when you look at Anton Corbijn's work, especially the, that's the guy from the Sex Pistols. There, what's his name?
Is that John Lydon?
John Lydon. Yeah. Is it John or Joe?
John.
No, Joe Lydon's a rugby player. There's the even though some of these pictures are relatively candid, the composition is good, the light and the contrast is amazing. There is a wonderful documentary of Anton Corbijn on Amazon Prime as well. Okay. I will link to it once again, of course, in the thing. But it's a good. He's a. Some people seem to think he's a little bit of a misery guts in real life. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I feel like I might get on very well with him. But I love his work, and this book, so Anton Corbijn, famous, is 1975 to 1988, so it's a lot of his old black and white plates, as you say, of course, all film photography.
Beautiful pictures.
Beautiful, many famous people, U2, Sex Pistols.
I once sat next to John Lydon in a round table discussion about music. Did I ever tell you that story?
No.
Do you remember Round Table?
Vaguely. Was it on just after Jack and Ori?
No, this is a radio program on Radio 1. And they always used to have each week 3 guests to review the week's latest releases. So there was on the panel that I think, who was in the chair? It was Jackie Brambles. Remember Jackie Brambles?
Yeah.
The Radio 1 presenter.
Yeah.
Then the presenter guest was me. And there was John Lydon, and there was Mick Rutherford. Is it,
from...
is it Mick Rutherford?
Mick Rutherford from... He Ain't Heavy.
No, Mick Rutherford from... Everywhere They Go.
Oh, yeah. Don't tell me. Australian band.
Mike Rutherford, not Mick. What am I talking
Yeah,
about?
don't tell me.
Everywhere.
Brothers, sisters.
I can't really sing the whole song for copyright purposes.
Just tell me half the first word.
Mike.
And the Mechanics.
The clue is in the name. If I only hadn't called him Mick. But anyway, on this particular episode of
Mick and the Mechanics
of Round Table, I remember John Lydon being particularly badly behaved, and the beers did floweth from the Radio 1 continuity fridge, and we came to a song by Bananarama, and Mike, bless him, he's just polite about everything. It's one of the nicest blokes you can meet. He was like, well, I quite like the way that it was all constructed, and I liked all that, and I like the way the chorus came in. I think they have beautiful tone, and he loved it. Came to me, and I sort of thought, well, if Mike said that, I'll say the same sort of thing. And then Jackie said to John Lydon, she said, what did you think, John? He sat back in his chair and said, well, I tell you what, I had more fun pulling my than I did listening to that. Let's have another song. The show aired for another couple of weeks, I think. I don't know how we're going to edit that into shape.
Oh, my word.
Oh, dear. Happy days.
Yeah.
Shall we?
Look at us.
Shall we do an interview?
Yeah.
Do you know this started in very humorous fashion, this interview, because I was introduced to Fran May as a photographer not so long back actually by my good friend Giles Penfound, the army photographer, and he said, you really should go and talk to Fran because she was mentored by Bill Brandt. Her work in the 70s in particular was absolutely phenomenal as a documentary piece about England. And so, I said, that sounds fantastic. So I went. We made an arrangement, and I turned up on the day, and I knocked on the door, and this happened. Hello, looking for Fran. Neil James.
Neil. Oh, for God's sake. Come in.
Had you forgotten I was coming?
Yes.
Oh, my word.
Come in. It's all right.
Okay.
It's just, I've had... I was going to look this morning. I must be coming this week. I must check.
Do you know, I nearly checked yesterday.
Come in here.
Are you okay?
Yes, I'm all right. Come in here.
Okie doke. An auspicious start to an interview, but as Fran May, the much-respected British documentary photographer, went about her home hurriedly making coffee and preparing for the unexpected scheduled interview, I couldn't help thinking my entrance was typical of how I thought of Fran since being introduced to her work. I was actually secretly thrilled that my appearance was now a reactionary process, the kind of reality that she's famous for photographing in her trademark down-to-earth style. So I went about setting up a trio of cameras for an in-vision interview, a short excerpt of audio that you're about to hear now. Her photo book, Fran May Photography 1974 to 1978, represents a revered collection of early work, a poignant narrative of monochromatic England in the pre-Thatcher years. The book includes the best part of 200 black and white pictures, the result of regular bus rides to 25 destinations to photograph documentary scenes. And for us, Fran May is now part of English photographic heritage. But it could have been such a different path after a family relocation from Vancouver.
My parents were English and they'd gone out to Canada with two small boys. Right. And there was still a lot of rationing after the war. And they were living in a very tiny flat in York with a work surface you had to take off in the kitchen to reveal a bath underneath. And, it'd been a bit of a struggle. They'd married late anyway. And my father had passed by a hotel with a sign in the window saying, "Big meeting, come and, come to Canada. Canada needs you."
Better life in Canada.
A better life, yes. Yeah. Land of milk and honey and all that. And he just thought he had nothing to lose, So he went over without my mother. And then my mother joined him later when he'd secured a job, got a house together and a car. And they'd never had a car before. And she went out on this ocean-going boat with two small boys, and she was the kind of girl who'd never been out of York before. That's where she'd born. She'd never been out of the city.
That was an education.
So it was petrifying,
yeah.
I know. She wrote a sort of journal as she went as well, so it's very interesting reading.
Do you still have that journal?
Yes, we do. And then she went out, and I was the firstborn in Canada. She had 5 babies in Canada. Then my father was told that he had to go work in the Peace River district, which was miles away from home, as it was, because he was an electrical engineer, and he was pioneering electrical lines over the Rockies, places that never had electricity before. Went with a group of men, there'd be about 50 of them. They'd cut down trees, build log cabins, shoot their own food, put some lines up, move on and do the whole process again. So he'd be away from home for about 3 months at a time anyway. And this other area that he was being sent to meant that he wouldn't come home very often. And in fact meant that we all would have had to have gone with him and gone to very elemental schools. And he just, his Englishness just kicked in. He didn't think he was doing right by us. And decided not to go. So he said, right, we'll all go live in New Zealand. So we all trekked off to New Zealand. And we were staying in about 3 motels, because by then there were 7 children. And I actually don't know how many months we were there. We were all trying to work it out, but he couldn't get a job. So he just phoned his old company back up in Leeds and said, "Can I come back?" And they said yes. I mean, he'd worked for them since the age of something like 13 as a lad polishing the doorknobs.
But you hadn't had any experience of the UK, of course.
No, none. I'd never been to school properly.
Well, you only knew Canada and New Zealand.
That's right. And it was always... We had a nice house. We were quite sort of middle-classy there. My father was earning good money. And we sailed into Southampton, and I'd never seen dullness like it, I remember feeling the trepidation. We all did.
You were itching to get back, weren't you?
Well, we came from blue skies. I mean, it's cold in Canada, but it's like having a dry heat, It doesn't affect you nearly as much as humidity. And the same with cold, If it's dry cold, you don't feel that cold so much. And of course, we always had blue skies. This enormous space change from this middle class, big white house in Canada in a sunshiny state where you could walk down to the beach, and suddenly I was in these grim places, and I couldn't work it out. I couldn't understand how it could be like that in England, where my parents had come from. I just couldn't get it. And so I think that's why I started photographing it. And then I got absolutely hooked, because of course we had, that in that time, it was terrible. It was 1973, 1974, the politics were haywire. I mean, with electricity 3 days a week, and all these strikes were going on, and I didn't realise it fully at the time because my father was very Victorian. Actually, we weren't allowed to read the newspaper. He was the only one to read the newspaper. We weren't allowed to watch television unless we asked first, and we had to say why we wanted to watch television. So we lived in a kind of vacuum, if you like, political vacuum. And I didn't really realise what was going on politically. All I knew was that suddenly we didn't have as much money as we used to have. And Mum was saying, well, we're going to a jumble sale. You can buy some new clothes there, that sort of thing. So my father's income must have plummeted at that point. And carpets were getting bare and all this sort of thing. So it must have been a difficult time for them. And so I just became even more hooked on the photography. I had a full grant, and I used to get buses. I used to get a bus, and I would go to Wakefield, I would go to Sunderland, I would go to Scarborough, I would go to Blackpool.
Did you ever have a plan as you went?
I didn't have a plan. Somebody would say something like, "Oh, the zoo in Manchester's closing down." I thought, "Oh, I better go and photograph it." Yeah. And so I would get the bus to Manchester and go walk around the zoo. And I'd only have a short while there because, what buses are like, they take forever to get there. You'd have a few hours and you had to come home again on a bus.
Now, you describe yourself as a loner, actually, and I've read that account of yourself, which is probably perfect, isn't it, for this kind of work and documentary photography? Because it's a very lonely individual occupation, isn't it?
You don't do it as a team. Yeah. You have to be a self-contained individual,
There's an outside chance that if you hadn't met Bill Brandt at the Royal College of Art, which is where you went,
yes,
that this could have remained a more personal body of work than work hidden from public gaze. Or had you decided by then, nope, this is what I'm doing, I'm a documentary photographer, this is where I'm headed?
No, strangely, I'll tell you, interestingly, I took more landscape photographs when I was at Sheffield than I did these people pictures. And if you ask either Roger Taylor or Ken Phillips now, they'll say, we didn't know you were taking those people pictures. They knew about my trees and my beautiful light in landscape pictures. And in fact, it was the landscape pictures that got me a place at the Royal College of Art, strangely. So I started looking for trees in London. I went to Wimbledon Common and I thought, those spindly little sort of silver birches or whatever they're called, and I thought this is no future. I think what I'm going to have to do is go back and do some more of those people pictures. So I thought, what can I do? And I went and I started actually photographing. I went right back to the I've got to understand people's lives thing. So I was a 50-50 person. I love landscape, and I still do lots of landscape, and I love doing the people pictures. So I thought, right, I'm going to photograph homeless people. So I got permission to go into a hostel for homeless men in City Road, and then I found a hostel for women, photographed them. And then I went into Centre Point in Shaftesbury Avenue and I photographed the kids. And I stayed there all night, a couple of nights, to help out. And then the idea was that I'd give them the pictures for publicity and so on. So I was doing that. And then somebody told me about this street called Brick Lane. I'd never heard of it. And I went there one morning. They said, you have to go early in the morning to capture the atmosphere. And I went there and I thought, yeah, there really is interesting. There's these huge characters playing accordions or, this strange instrument. I don't know what it is. It's like a hybrid instrument somebody called Ginger would play. And just the other people that were there as well, the people in the cafes and who walked around. And I just went back and back and back and back. And so when, in the second year, when Bill Brandt was given an honorary doctorate, he had to, as part of that, he was asked to do some teaching duties. And he was quite old. He was in his mid-80s or mid to late 80s. And he was too old to come into college. So we used to go to his house in High Street, Ken. And I remember ringing the doorbell, and this woman's voice would say, who is it? And I'd say, it's Fran from college, come for Bill Brandt. Come upstairs. And we were up on the second floor. She'd disappear, but there was a voice came from another room, and Bill Brandt would be sitting near the fire. Always had a live fire. And he'd asked to sit on a stool at his feet and show pictures. And I showed him the first time, I showed him my landscape pictures, because I knew he liked landscapes as well. And he said, I don't think I can teach you anything. I said, oh, all right then. And I didn't know if that was a rejection. I didn't know quite how to talk to him. And I was only 21, I was only 21 years of age at that time, 22 maybe. I went back to college and I met John Hedgecoe, who was the professor in those days, in the corridor. He said, how did you get on with Bill Brandt? And I said, well, I don't think I'll go back. He said, he can't teach me anything. He said, you will go back. He said, you make the most of your opportunities. You go back again next week. So I thought, what shall I take him this time? I'll take him those people pictures. Took him a great bunch of them in a portfolio. And these different effect on him entirely. He sat and he looked through them all really slowly, and he had this lamp behind his back, and I remember him stopping and pulling the lamp a bit closer over his shoulder and settling down again. And he just looked through them, and I just watched his face because the fire was lit again and it would flicker on his face. And, he looked through them and he said, where did you take these pictures? And I told him that the first lot were in Sheffield, some were in Leeds, etc. And the last ones he'd looked at were in Brick Lane. I'd only taken them within the last fortnight or so. And he just said to me, Fran, I'll tell you, don't ever lose these pictures. They will have social significance one day. And he, really emphasised that. And basically, I think going back one final time after that, where I'd sort of realised I'd done something special, but I didn't really know how special. And so we talked about why, and he talked about, the key moments that you photograph in your life have a huge significance, and they become timeless moments. And that, even in his own lifetime, photographs that he took, which were then juxtaposed in the way that they were in his books with wealthy the parlourmaids in wealthy homes being juxtaposed next to a miner who was covered in soot and is just wearing his vest and is sitting down for his tea, still all dirty, or in having a wash in a tin bath with his wife pouring water over. But the juxtapositions had a profound effect on everybody. And he said, but they were, a lot of those pictures were commissions that he took, just commercial jobs that he was given. But it's the way they were juxtaposed later. But he said the effect in his own lifetime of the passage of time had an enormous effect as well, because people look back, they're looking back in their own lifetime to a visual proof, if you like, a truth, that they're almost on the cusp of forgetting. and yet you can't forget it because the photographs are there. And it was real. It was silver recorded with real light affecting objects and bouncing into the camera. So you were recording a reality. It wasn't like painting or drawing or even using words. It was a reality that you could really get to grips with. And it was the best way of recording life on Earth. It became like that. It became profound, It was just an amazing, amazing thing to realise.
So thank you to Fran May for being our guest this week on the podcast. And I don't know whether I will have done it. So I'm trying to think in the future when this podcast was recorded and when the film might be made. But I'm going to stick a Fran May film up in the air, actually, of her answering a lot more questions than what you just heard, and that'll be on my personal YouTube channel. But we'll probably share a bit across onto the FujiCast YouTube channel as well. Have you been there yet, by the way? No? You should do. Matthew Campagna, complaint.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no. Complaint coming in, everyone.
Warning.
I'm very much enjoying the podcast in all ways but one. It's a soundboard. Oh, sorry, we just used it. I'd happily see the entire thing destroyed. But if I do have one request, though, it's that you just remove the Trump clips. When you play the Don't Be Rude clip, I grate my teeth and I'm reminded about how frustrated I am in the midst of all this stuff. So, I don't know what to say, because it's supposed to be just satire, really, isn't it? Satire.
Yeah, can't please all the people all the time.
You certainly can't, can you, Donny?
Don't be rude.
Absolutely. You know that Spitting Image is coming back, don't you?
Yeah.
It's perfect time for Spitting Image, isn't it?
I loved Spitting Image.
Oh.
Loved it.
That was the theme tune, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was something like that.
Something like that, anyway.
Lister from Red Dwarf was on it, wasn't he?
Yes.
Started it off.
So, Matthew, sorry, I do apologise about that. It's supposed to, I don't know, it's supposed to be a bit of satire, I don't know, USP, but we're doing our best.
Okay, Florian Cortese, straight in there with the right pronunciation.
Yeah, you were, actually.
I'm in the process of switching from Canon to Fuji, probably the X-T3 and not the new X-T4. I bought the X100F last year and just fell in love with it. I started watching YouTube and saw several of Kevin's videos and became a subscriber to him.
There's a cure.
I just recently discovered FujiCast last week and caught your 1-year celebration podcast. So here I am.
Yeah.
I'm a subscriber too.
Well, welcome.
Oh, sorry. No, I'm a subscriber to Thomas as well, since I do landscape photography. Tom Heaton.
Oh, Tom Heaton. Yeah.
Anyway, cheers from Butte, Montana. Oh, it wasn't a question after all. It was just a thank you.
It's just a statement.
Oh, well, that's very nice of you, Florian.
You know that long meeting that we have every single morning where you drink coffee and we discuss which questions are going to be on the show, and I hand you your questions.
I never read the questions.
You do read them, don't you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Dominic Bigato. Enjoy the show. Had a quick question with the two of you. I quite enjoy occasionally putting some vintage glass on the old X Pro 2. The combination really harkens back to the feeling of when I shot film. The manual focus and character of the glass lend to the experience and resulting images. Do either of you put old glass on your digital cameras? I did actually with my Canons, but I haven't actually ever tried it with the Fujis. But I believe there's some great stuff out there that you can...
I've got a couple of old...
Have you? What do you use to connect the...
I have a couple of old Minolta lenses.
Ah, right, okay.
And, with a little Minolta adapter, so you can...
Are those adapters easy to get?
Yeah, and they're dirt cheap as well.
Are they?
Yeah, dirt cheap. Well, of course, it's manual focus only, though.
So what do you mean by dirt cheap? What sort of cost?
Like the adapters that could be £15.
Oh, nothing at all?
No.
Right,
no,
okay.
no. And the old lenses often are quite cheap as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're pretty good.
Perfect. Right, do you have an actual question?
I have a real question,
I
think.
Good.
This is from Jorel Gates in Chicago, Illinois. Do either of you have what you consider your work cameras and your personal cameras? Personally, my wife and I shoot weddings together, so we have 4 XH1s, an XT3, etc., etc.
Right.
4 XH1s
4
and an
XH1s,
XT3.
wow.
That we use for photography and filming. Oh, okay, fair enough. Along with big expensive glass. Most of that gear stays in the case unless out doing a paid job or a wedding, and I have an XE3, a cheap XE1650 that I use to walk around, and I find it gives me a bit more peace of mind knowing that if it were damaged, stolen, or accidentally left behind, that I would still have the work, the equipment I need to do for my main job. Just wondering what your points of view are to this. Thanks again for making such an enjoyable show.
Well, I suppose the X100F would be my don't use professionally camera. I know plenty of people do use the F professionally, don't they?
Yeah.
I just have it because there is a separation between using that camera and using an XT3 for me.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to be said for, not wanting to lose your main income generating cameras if you just leave them in the park or something. But yeah, I typically just kind of levitate towards the X100. I also had an XE3, sold it.
Right. You got rid of a lot of cameras.
All gone. Yeah. All gone.
Who on earth bought one of those? Because you don't have dividers in your bag. They must have been in terrible state.
My XE3 was in mint condition.
Was that mint? Was it?
Yeah. Although no box, of course, or cables or chargers or anything like that. XT100.
Do you throw all that stuff away?
Yeah.
You should keep that.
I recycle it.
Put it into a big box.
What? I would have to have a box as big as your studio for all my stuff.
You're a bit of a hoarder.
No, it's much better to recycle it. And it's a fact. It is a real thing that the resale value is higher if you keep the box. That makes me so angry.
Isn't that interesting?
Why would you pay more for something, for a camera, because it's got a box?
Well, it becomes a collectible, you see.
No.
I beg your pardon. You see, Thomas, our youngest, okay, he loves his model trains, as you well know.
Yes.
And one of the trains he wanted last year for Christmas was this is for all train spotters in the UK, the GWR Class 800. Which
I
is
know it well.
You know it well because you travel on it a lot, don't you? Mm-hmm. But it's the new electric one. Mm-hmm. So we got it. It came in its box. It was the Paddington Bear Michael Bond edition because his name is on that particular train. And so there we go. And now that train boxed, only boxed, mind, is worth £1,000.
Yes,
to collect.
That is very different.
So I crept into his room a couple of days ago, boxed it up, and sent it out. No, I haven't really.
Bless him.
Can you imagine that? We did say it to him when he was misbehaving himself. A couple of weeks ago. He said, "Don't send my train off."
Oh, bless him. But no, that's different because that is collection stuff.
Yeah.
And so my original X100 I've kept the box for because that is a collector's item. And I also have my original. So I have my modified box for the X Pro 1 when I had it reskinned. Right. They did this kind of signature edition.
Reskinned?
Signature edition, yeah. I had it skinned with black leather.
Wow.
Fujifilm did that for a little while. They don't do it any longer. So yeah, things like collector stuff is fine, yes. But an XT100 or an XE3 is not a collector's item.
No.
And it does. The fact is, it does. You will get more if you have the box and the manuals and the little stickers and everything and all that stuff. But that makes me absolutely. I just do not understand it. No. Why? I want to buy this thing to take pictures with. But I'm willing to give you a little bit more money if you've got a box and a piece of paper and a sticker and Like, have you still got the little plastic, little tiny plastic sheets that the lugs, where the straps they come in a little plastic.
I keep all of that.
You don't keep that stuff.
I put it all in the box, and if I ever sell a camera, which I have and do, then I know that I can send it.
But it's better to recycle it
as box. Yeah,
yes.
Well, we do a fair amount of recycling.
Well, you've got more to do, my friend.
I'm not there. You ready for some
indulgence?
Are you ready? Let's go for club indulgence. Have you got some? Do you want some reviews? I thought you had some over there. Let me pass you a couple. There's always some reviews. There we go. There's some reviews for you. Here we go. A great listen on a Monday morning. Oh, thank you very, very much, by the way, for the reviews that you're sending through the Apple Podcast. They really do help the show. Honestly, they do, because that helps us be identified by the great Apple powers that be, and they elevate us up there, and we reach a few more listeners and stay here just a little bit longer. So a great listen on a Monday morning, something to brighten up my dreary Monday morning drive to Cardiff. That's not dreary, is it?
Well, you get to go through the beautiful Newport.
Yes.
Keep you awake all the time.
Mates having a chat about everything photography related, not just Fuji, but Canon as well. Yeah, we do mention Canon from time to time. Loving the banter and learn something every single time I listen. You may even move me over to Fuji fully as your subliminal messages. Bye, Fuji. Bye, Fuji. Of how good Fujifilm is starting to work. Thank you and keep going. From Steve, another photographer in Wales. Steve Weller.
That was a long one. This one's from Dave Trice. He says, vaccine to those Monday morning blues.
Oh, don't mention that word.
Seems apt.
Yeah.
Kevin and Neil are just incredible. Yada, 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 yada. Their podcast fosters an awesome community of professionals and enthusiasts that engage with really useful topics and insights. This community simply tee up the many of the talking points on Kevin and Neil's dynamic together and knock it out of the park. The weekly content is never lacking, with great interviews, lots of laughs, and some interesting, thought-provoking information. If you enjoy photography, no matter the market or gear you utilise, you will enjoy yourself and will actually start looking forward to Mondays for another round.
Yes. Do you know, if we ever had some merch, that's the trendy thing to say, isn't it? Merch?
Merch. It
would just, I think the T-shirt should be just yada, yada, yada.
I hate that word, merch. hate.
Almost as much as zine. Anyway, look, thank you very much. If you sent in some reviews, you're an absolute star. We love you to bits, obviously, and you must remember,
you're our favourite listener, and we mean it.
True. Right, your question.
This is a question from Jan Kroger. He's from Rummelsburger, Bucht in Berlin.
Spell that for me. Jan,
Jan.
Yeah.
Kroeger.
How did you say that?
Jan Kroeger.
Yeah, I think that's right. Nobody's disagreed with you.
And he's from Rummelsburger, Bucht in Berlin. Yeah, I'm not saying it again. It's terrible. I enjoy every upcoming podcast of yours, though I am not a professional, but an enthusiast, and love taking up your interview partners' tips and challenges. Yeah. I know you, Kevin, in brackets, have explained that you often use AFL button. I don't understand when you use it.
I thought that was going to be a bit freaky then. I know you, Kevin. I know where you live.
I've been under your bed. I would assume that people during weddings move around and the focal plane is always changing.
Yeah.
In situations where the focal plane isn't changing, I can understand to use it. I do mostly kite surf, snow kite, travel and people photography.
Oh, wow. I've always wanted to do that snow kiting.
And try to figure out where I can make use of it. Yeah. And I have an advantage using it. Best greetings from Rummelsburger Bucht in Berlin. Yeah, I mean, you're quite right, Jan, in that AFL is you can use it, utilize it with continuous. You can have your AFL button on the back kick into the continuous tracking mode. I typically don't do that, but you can. It's all about reaction speed, really. So if people are moving up the aisle, for example, recessional or the confetti shot, then I stick it in continuous focus mode. If they're not, then they're not. If people are moving, running around, walking around, it's unlikely that I'm kind of taking pictures of them doing that. It's more about hugging, intimate stuff, people laughing, joking. So they are standing still. So back button focus, one click, click, three clicks of the button on the top. Autofocus is divorced from the focus button on the back of the camera, so the camera doesn't slow down and refocus every time. For things like your kite surfing, snow kite, travel and all that kind of stuff, then possibly you want to be looking more at continuous focus, zone focus, maybe spot focus, various things like that. So it doesn't what's the saying? One glove doesn't fit all feet. Is that a thing?
No, I don't think so.
One glove doesn't fit all hands, feet.
Yeah.
One glove doesn't fit all feet.
I don't know where you heard that saying.
Anyway. Just because I do it doesn't mean you have to do it, of course. And cameras are made to be very customizable. They'll allow you to do it in your own way. You too can have a glove on your foot.
Jonathan Kerr from Northern Ireland. I follow a great street photographer called Pierre T. Lambert. Do you know?
Yes.
Pierre T. Lambert?
I do. Well, I don't know him personally.
Seen his work?
Yes.
Good work?
Yeah, excellent.
His YouTube channel consists primarily of FPV, that's first-person view, GoPro videos of him shooting street, and I have to say I really enjoy them. In a recent video shot in Chicago during a blizzard, Pierre crosses a busy intersection and stumbles across a homeless man.
Yeah, I know where this
Do you know
is
what's
going.
coming up?
Yeah.
Lying under a blanket on the street corner. The video shows Pierre's pace slow, and as soon as he passes his field of view, he raises his camera, takes a shot, and goes merrily about the remainder of his YouTube video, but not before displaying a final edited version of the photograph on screen. I found it more morally reprehensible in photography to say, said individual being taken during a snowstorm without even so much as offering something in exchange, or at the very least speaking to or acknowledging the person in question, because we're all people at the end of the day, and the last place this person likely wanted to be was in a snowstorm. Was asking for loose change on a street corner in frigid downtown Chicago. I'd like your thoughts on the matter. Keep up the good work, from Jonathan Kerr. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Jonathan. Oh, well, presumably his opinion is the same as mine.
Oh, yeah, I would imagine so, yeah. He finds it morally reprehensible to make this kind of photograph.
Yeah, I do. Not so much making the photograph, but then making the photograph and using it to get shekels on YouTube with no return to the poor guy in the street. So my moral compass when it comes to homeless people, travellers, street people, whatever you want to call, whatever the right way of referring to them these days is that I wouldn't take pictures of anything that I wouldn't be comfortable being in that picture myself. And so I've never done a project about homeless people, but if I was doing a project about homeless people, that would be different, and so I would speak to them and engage with them, and they would be rewarded for that. But I think typically for them to be down on their luck like that is not a fair level playing field for me, unless it's a particular project. Everybody's mileage may vary. Your socks may fit on other hands or whatever. But yeah, I agree with.
What about Lee Jeffries? What about Lee Jeffries with his work?
Yeah, but now Lee's different, isn't it? Because his stuff is far more interactive based. Right. So he's speaking to these people, and who knows, he may be rewarding them somehow. But at the end of the day, he's not.
But he's making artwork as well, isn't he?
Yeah, but he's not walking past them and stealing a picture without them even knowing.
True.
That's a very big difference, I think.
Right. We've got time for one more question, then we'll remember this week the disaster story.
Okay, so I have a question from Mark Neal. He says, "Hey chaps, long-time listener and fan, yada 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 yada. So recently I posted on the Facebook group about my photo I took back in 2015 at Auschwitz concentration camp. My question to the group was to see what views were on, in quotes, air quotes, dark tourism photography and the general consensus of capturing images at places like this. I was deeply moved and emotional on my visit there, and I think that came across in the images I captured. I have considered creating a book to share my images and thoughts about the camps. What's your view of people documenting and capturing things like this? Is it good or bad? Some of these places have seen horrific loss of life and will stir some pretty strong feelings from those that have been affected. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to many more episodes." Mark Neal. Mark Neal .photography.
I think it's important to make those kind of photographs. This is making pictures of some of history's darkest moments. But it's important.
Didn't we? I'm sure Ali Stewart. Remember Ali Stewart? She used to email us a lot.
Yeah,
Ali,
she's gone off us, I think.
Gone off us a bit, I think. Yeah.
Must have said something.
She'd probably listened to something else. Yeah. Anyway, I think Ali raised this question about dark tourism photos a few months back, and I'm fairly sure we talked about it.
Yeah.
However, I'm kind of with you. I think that as long as it's not gratuitous and for the likes, I'm going to get this picture because it's going to look awesome on Instagram.
Yeah.
That's wrong. That's where the moral compass is a little bit discomposed. But yeah, if you're doing it for the right reasons, which you obviously are, Mark, then absolutely it's important. It is important for this stuff. I've never been there.
Do you want to go? Would you like to go? Is it a place you've thought about going to?
Do you know what? If I was to go there, part of me would thinks that I probably wouldn't even take a camera.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Giles went there and he did this work called Day Trips to Hell.
Oh God.
And it was going to be the start of a series, I think, which this was the only one that he produced, which was from Auschwitz. But
Yeah.
particularly poignant piece of work.
Yeah,
That's true.
of course, it's everybody is different, and I think that, and I'm somebody who was not touched by that in the war, so thankfully.
What about stuff like Chernobyl? Are you interested in Pripyat and Chernobyl?
Yeah, I mean, it's the similar thing. This is where the conversation came from, Ali. Actually, it was about Chernobyl. So,
Was it? Okay,
yes.
yeah.
Again, I don't think it's somewhere that I would necessarily be interested in going to, with a camera at least. I'm interested in the history of it. I'm interested in the, the facts and what happened and the recoveries and all that kind of stuff.
That HBO series, by the way, was amazing.
I wouldn't. It was too scary for me. I wouldn't go.
Well, now you're into your horror movies. You could watch this.
Right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go to these places now this is me speaking, right? I wouldn't go to these places to create a photographic essay. I would go because I would want to be educated rather than for the photography. Now, whether the photography comes as part of that is different. Whereas I'd love to go to somewhere like North Korea to make a photographic essay and probably get in trouble. So
Is Kev back? Yeah, it's been away 3 years. He never came back. Yeah. They must like him, or he must like them.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I love it.
The only thing about going back to the Chernobyl one that I get sometimes, the ones I don't like are the YouTubers that go in there that creep into the exclusion zone because they think it's being clever.
Yeah.
And they sneak around, they're evading security, and they're thinking, guys, it wasn't so long ago that this was actually the grave place for many people.
That's terrible.
Bonkers.
Yeah, bonkers. Yeah. That's the word I was going to say.
Oh, I just thought I'd rescue you there.
Yeah.
Are you ready for a photo disaster?
Yes.
All right. Just to lighten the mood. Nicola Alton. Hello, Neil. Hello, Kevin. Absolutely love the show. A couple of years ago, I had an XT2 for fun and Nikon, or is it Nikon? How do we say this?
Oh, God.
Should we start again? For everything else, I was thrilled to win a place on one of Nikon School's day out to Northumberland. First stop, the Lighthouse at Whitley Bay. Oh, I've been there. I began to mount my D7100 along with my barely used 8-16mm on the tripod. I think I hear the click of the quick release plate. Take my hand away and watch as my camera tumbles in slow motion along the path, straight under the railing into the sea. I screamed and ran down to the sea. The camera had landed on a little ledge. I waded in to get it. It was wet through. The Nikon team were very good and lent me some more kit for the day, but I did cry. Especially as I'd taken all my things, Nikon things off my insurance this month, as I was using the Fuji more. I'll never take... If you own kit, I mean, I don't really think you gain an awful lot by taking odds and bobs off, do you? Really?
No.
I really don't. Next, I traded all the Nikon gear in and came home with a new Fuji 16-55 and a 5140. I've increased my insurance and I double-checked my tripod. I'm very happy with my now vast collection of Fuji gear. Keep up the work. Nicola Alton from Ashby de la Zouche. Ashby de la Zouche actually exists.
No, she made that up.
No!
It's not true.
It's a real place.
No, only Adrian Mole knows it.
I always used to think it was only a place that was on travel reports.
That was the thing in Adrian Mole, wasn't it?
Was it Ashby de la Zouche?
Yeah.
I did a wedding at a church in Ashby de la Zouche.
No, but it doesn't exist.
No. Oh, well, I was as surprised to find it as you are. Send your disaster stories in to click@fujicast.co.uk. I think we've run out of questions, haven't we?
I think so.
Run out of questions?
Yeah, I've got nothing.
Should we call time gentlemen, please? Time gentlemen, please. That's it for another week. We are putting some stuff now on the new YouTube channel that we have, so feel free to go and see some of the what we might call, I think, mop-ups. Some of the mop-up questions are on there.
Mop-ups.
If you've liked this week's show, then if you can comment on Apple Podcast reviews, that would be absolutely brilliant. Thank you. It does make a difference. We do read every single one. Thank you to this week's guest, Fran May, as well. We'll link to Fran May's book, by the way, in the show notes. If you can share an episode on Twitter or Facebook, absolutely brilliant. Thank you. And please let us know where you're sharing it, just in case we can give them a shout back too, because sharing is caring after all. Send your questions to click@fujicast.co.uk. We're doing quite well, actually. I noticed the electronic mailbag was beginning to fizzle, down a little bit the last couple of weeks. So I know there's a lot going on in people's minds at the moment, obviously, but don't forget to send your questions in. This could be your respite.
And it doesn't...
Sorry?
And it doesn't have to be about Fujifilm.
No, it doesn't.
It could be about any camera.
Or anything.
Oh, anything. Yes.
Kev's cookery tips.
Yeah, I'm good at that.
Yeah, you are, actually.
I made a lush vegan lasagna the other night.
Vegan lasagna?
Yeah. Lush it was.
Was it?
Lush.
Well, Welsh lush.
Lush.
Vegan lasagna. What's in a
And I
vegan
made
lasagna?
Buffalo cauliflower wings.
Buffalo? Oh!
God, I see. I'm going home.
Music from Blue Wednesday. Oh, of course it is, yes. Supporting music for the incredible artlist.io. And if you'd like to find out more about us and go to our websites and see what we're up to with the training and all the stuff that we do, then there's one easy page to go visit for the addresses.
Learn about the kit Neil and Kevin use, get links to all their websites, and find out first about any new workshops coming up by going to www.FujiCast.co.uk/the boys.
And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Delayed.
Sorry.
Of course, just to jump in on a show that was recorded before we got locked down, this is to remind you that in actual fact we'll meet again tomorrow as the FujiCast Daily takes to the downloadable airwaves. So keep those questions coming in, as we said, but equally keep us up to date with what you're doing, how you're preparing to go back online in a business sense, or what you've been doing to build your technical and artistic skills during this unexpected downtime. Until tomorrow then, thank you for listening, and thank you for being part of what we now like to think of as a very special community, filled with very special people.
The FujiCast is an independent loading zone production. Email the show with your questions and words of wisdom to click@fujicast.co.uk. Email any complaints and political nonsense to our wives, who will deal with your comments in their own good time and in their own good way.